Hello everyone, it's Laura Jane. Thank you for joining me at my stop on the Vintage Vibes video hop with Altenew. This is the Watercolor Extravaganza stamp set, and there is a coordinating die set. This is a card that I created for the release on the 5th of July. Now my challenge to myself is to see if I could create a one-layer wonder card using the stamps and masking. So there's a lot of masking today, as well as some stencils using the Feeling Dotty and woven stencils. I'm starting out with an A2 size piece of cardstock. I like to stamp using the 110-pound. My original card is helping me map out where I am placing my masks. The masking paper here is from Altenew, and I'm first cutting at least one of every die that comes in the coordinating die set of the Watercolor Extravaganza. So, and I remembered to cut on the white side, not the printed side. And here is the first bloom that I'm placing, the largest one kind of in the upper left-hand corner. And that first yellow bloom mask needs to go first. In placing the masks, you need to think about what is on the very top, so to speak, of my dimensional card there. So that is in the very front of this floral cluster. So that large bloom mask needs to go on the paper first, and then we're going to work backwards. So there's these pretty little pink sprays of watercolor flowers there, and we're putting those masks down. And you can see I'm layering up the mask according to what is going to be on the topmost. I hope I'm making myself clear in this. Now this kind of orangish bloom, I didn't make a second mask for. I just flipped the release paper over and used it as a mask as well, and secured it with some washi tape. I'm using Obsidian Pigment Ink for the sentiment, which I wanted to make sure I got placed on my card front first. Then I heat embossed it. I wanted to make sure that that sentiment was placed exactly, and before I work on using the stamps all around it. So now I have placed all my masks of the flowers. If you notice, I did not mask off any of the leaves because I'm just going to stamp those first. And here is my first stamping. I inked it up with bamboo. And you can see how easy it is to second stamp that right over the top. And I used a darker shade of green, my olive, just kind of whisked on some color and then placed it on here. These stamps are so lovely in the watercolor feel that they leave, that exact stamping is not necessary. Here's the second leaf image that I inked up again in bamboo, and then I'm coming in and whisking just a little bit of that olive color over the top on different areas of that image and restamping again to give that just that beautiful feel and look of watercolor. I then went in with a third shade of green. This is moss. Hit just a little bit of that for some more depth and detail. I love how that turned out. And here's another leaf image, which all the leaves in this watercolor extravaganza are just so pretty. I love all the different shapes in here. As you can see, I I use all of them and just had a great time just building up the leaves. And you can see before I stamped this leaf that I peel back one of the flower masks because I realized that in my original layout of the dimensional card there was a leaf that was on top of one of the blooms, and I had forgotten that when placing the masks. So I peel back that mask just a little bit and then I stamp the leaf down because that is going to come to the forefront of that cluster. And then I did grab one of the masks for that leaf and placed it over the top and then put that floral bloom mask right back into place and continued stamping the greens. I'm just following the same pattern of starting with the bamboo, the lightest shade of green, getting that stamped. And these leaves, I'm making sure that it's kind of tucked in around the hello and friend. I didn't want to cover up that sentiment. I wanted them to kind of drape around it. So I'm adding leaves all around the masks on the, just so they're peeking out from the edge of the floral masks. And I keep checking back with my original card. So it kind of as a little bit of a map, so to speak, of where I'm wanting the greens. You don't have to add all the different shades of green if you don't want to. I do like the variation of light and dark shades of green. I like to give this kind of a treatment on any kind of leaf or greenery. Just give them slight little whisks of a darker shade and re-stamp over the top. And again, if it's not perfectly aligned, it doesn't matter. This is the beauty, that just the remarkable flexibility and ease of stamping with this watercolor extravaganza set. Okay, and here's my original card again, and I'm trying to decide, okay, which flower do I go to stamping next? So I checked back with that and I decided it needs to be this kind of the lowest hanging pink spray. And I've used some tweezers to lift that mask up. This part of the extravaganza set has a couple of layers to this bloom. So this is the first stamp of that bloom, and I inked it up with a frosty pink. I'm going to ink it up several times because I want that pink to be really vibrant. Placement of it is pretty easy because of that mask kind of left a little bit of an outline with the greenery so that I could know exactly where I wanted to place that. I stamped the stem next, and a couple of shades of the green. Again, if the placement is not exact the first time, that's where you can kind of come back in with the darker shade and re-stamp, and it looks like you know exactly what you're doing. Now this is the second layer on this, and I inked that up with a coral berry, stamped it several times so it would be nice and dark. Then I realized that there was some white space around where the leaves were and where the blooms, so I inked up the frosty pink of the first image there and kind of just offset it again so that there would not be a white outline between the bloom and the green leaves. So we're moving on to the bloom here that is off to the side, and I inked that with the pastel sunset. And because I have so many masks kind of layered up, and I'm not stamping on the Essentials stamp mat, which is the white mat from Altenew, I needed to really press down on my acrylic block in order for the ink to come in contact with the paper. but because I do the video on this black mat, there's not quite as much give here as normally as if I'm stamping on the White Essentials mat. So the second layer of this flower, I used the Canyon clay, and I did ink that up twice, again, just to make sure I had some good contact and good pigment laid down. And then the third layer, I used the burnt red. There's a fourth layer, just a itty bitty little center there. That is the mahogany bark. All right, next moving on to another one of those peachy little flowers. I lifted off the mask and there was a little bit of residue from the masking paper, and I just used my eraser just to kind of lift that up. And inked the first layer in the frosty pink. Here you can see I'm kind of pointing out that white outline that I was getting, that was left behind between the green leaves and the pink, and just kind of re-stamped down, giving it once more of a watercolor look. And the second layer inked up with the coral berry, and then quickly inked up the little bit of a stem that goes with that bloom. And I think it's coming along nicely. Then we went over to the other side, that more of a peach bloom up there on the top. Again, the leaves that are on off to the side, there kind of gives an idea of the placement of where that bloom is going to sit on this arrangement. Kind of tuck it in there. Inked it up with the same color scheme as the first, which is actually the Martian terrain, which pastel sunrise, canyon clay, the burnt red, and mahogany bark. And finally, inking up the largest floral bloom. And you can see the exact placement of it because of the outline that's left there. Inking it up first with Warm Sunshine. Making sure I'm pressing down firmly to get some good contact. Now you can see the white outlines around that large sunflower, is what I'm going to call that. So I'm re-inking, and a slight different position of that stamp will help take care of that white outline. I wanted to really brighten this one up, so I added the citrus burst, especially around the edges of each of the petals. Really wanted to get rid of the white outlines that was there, and so I am pressing only on the edges and with just an offset of where the original stamped image was, just to kind of fill it in. And I do this a couple of times, making sure the contact of the stamp is on the edge. I wanted you to see this in real time, so I didn't cut anything out of this video. It does get long. I'm sorry. I hope you enjoy watching it come together. Now this is the second image for the large bloom, and I'm inking it up in Sunray. Looks like I need to re-ink my Sunray pad here. And the third image for this flower, I've inked up with the Snapdragon crisp ink and deciding which direction I wanted to place the little sprays out from the center. I had to fiddle with it just to decide. But again, there's no right or wrong with the set. You can place it any which way because it has that really loose watercolor feel. So I re-inked that with Snapdragon again and placed it directly over in order to really brighten that section up. Here's the center of that. I inked with Warm Sunshine. The next image on there, just the little dots. I started with the Coral Berry, and that wasn't bright enough for my liking, and so then I went with the Burnt Red. That worked out much better. Decided that there was too much of a blank space over there above the sentiment, so I replaced a few of the masks, grabbed one of my little favorite leaves images and inked it up with olive, and just had a few of those peeking out, and then went a second inking with moss, just with a little whisk of color. And I found that there was a little too much white space there between the petal and the greens of the leaves. I inked up the petal from the large stamp and pressed it in place, and ooh, I was very happy with how that turned out. So here are the two cards side by side. We have on the one on the left is the original with the dimensional tape, everything cut out, popped up, and then on the right is what we just stamped today. Very similar, and I was pleased with the outcome. Now a person could stop right there if wanted to, but I wanted to again challenge myself to see if I could add the background layers. So I grabbed some washi tape. This just happened to be the exact width of that band of white that was on my original card. I'm using the grids on the mat to help align that, get it somewhat straight. Again, I'm not a perfectionist when it comes to getting things straight. The mat does help. Then the next step is to replace masks, place them over what we've stamped. Again, this one I used the release paper of that mask. I just turned it over and that worked very well. Used a little bit of washi tape to hold it in place. There, but the idea is to get the mask to cover up as much of the stamped image parts as possible. And then we're taking the Feeling Dainty stencil and placing it over the top. And I wanted to make sure that there was a straight line at the bottom, so I just grabbed something that came in from my packages from an Altenew order. That's the perfect straight line protecting the bottom of the card here as I'm inking up through the Feeling Dainty with the pink diamond and rose quartz, using that small ink blending tool. So easy to add the blend there. And that turned out nicely. Next, then, I'm using the woven stencil and just reversing placement of that postcard there, so I have a nice straight line across my card front as I ink it up with Coral Berry. And I think that looks great. And here we go. Let's see how it turns out. This is the most exciting part of the whole masking and stenciling over the top. looking good so far. Again, so a one layer wonder with lots and lots of layers. And of course I can't leave it alone, so I grabbed a white gel pen to add some white highlights. This gel pen wasn't working very well, but I'll take care of that a little bit later. I wanted to add a few more details of darker color with some artist markers. So this is the Coral Berry artist marker, and I'm adding just a little bit of dots where more shadows would be. Again, this is not a step that has to be done, but I just can't seem to let a project go. I like to add a little extra detail. This is the Sun-Kissed marker, adding in some details there on the more the peachy and the yellow flower. And then this is Rubellite coming in to the center of that large yellow bloom, adding more detail there. Again, just hitting them with some dots, spaced where I think more of a shadow needs to be. Here is my white highlight fix. This is the Bleed Proof White. I think it's Dr. Martin's. And then the Zero Detail watercolor brush from Altenew. And I'm just barely adding a little bit of that white paint to the tip and just barely touch the tip of that detail brush where I want highlights in the center of the flowers. That's what I wanted it to look like, that I wasn't getting with the gel pen. Then last, when the greens, I'm using the Olive artist marker and adding some dots. And I even added a little bit of that green towards the center of each of the blooms. And now I believe I'm done. And now the card is finished. I'm finally pleased with it. I was questioning whether I needed to add a little bit of gray shadow on the stenciled areas, but I decided I better stop and get to my next project. So I do hope you enjoyed watching this come together. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. Remember, this is part of a video hop with prizes, so leaving comments along the way will give you more chance to win those prizes. Remember to craft your life with Altenew, and we'll see you next time. Bye.